Hi. So, it's been a while. Lots of reasons. I mean, y'all know that Hal died, so I'm okay, but it threw me into a bit of a funk, and I didn't really want to appear on camera or create things or do anything but just like chill to the max. So yeah, that's number one. Number two is, this is Pippin. His official name is Peregrine Took the Younger. He is a goblin in cat form. He's very small, but he is apparently going to get very big because I think I've accidentally gotten a, whatchamacallit? What are you called? Maine Coon. I think I've accidentally taken a homeless Maine Coon cat off the street. And literally I just, from the street, Craigslist, parking lot, Starbucks, give me this free cat. She handed me a kitten, and then I had a cat. So yeah, he's a goblin. He's gonna be enormous probably, and it's just a lot of work, and I haven't wanted to be on camera. I haven't wanted to create things, and maybe it's a little bit like depression or who knows. And then two other things. I got my nose pierced, and I don't know if you can tell, my bookshelves have grown. Oops, I scared Pippin. I'm sorry, baby. Yeah, that's the biggest updates in my life. Been reading, just relaxing, dealing with this. Okay, I'm gonna put you down now. Say bye, everyone. Bye. Okay, so what this video is sort of a way to ease myself back in, because I have never done a book tag before. For those of you who are not familiar, if you don't normally watch BookTube, a book tag is like just a list of questions that somebody has created, and that you're supposed to answer the questions, and everybody's supposed to answer the same questions and then tag someone. I'm not going to tag anyone because I don't have any BookTube friends, and I was not tagged. I just decided I wanted to do this. But this one in particular is the Midyear book Freakout tag, and it's designed to sort of like sum up your first 6 months of the year. And I don't know who created it. Maybe I'll link it in the thing. I don't know who created it, but it just seemed like a fun thing to do and a easy-ish way to get back into filming. So we're gonna go through these questions. There are, I did not number them. Looks like there's 11. I could have just miscounted. I'm gonna try and not be as verbose as usual because I'm trying out a new video frames per second and resolution. So I think the file's gonna be pretty big. Pippin, stop! He's biting my hands. That's why he's a goblin. He wants to play all the time, and playing right now is biting. So it's real fun. Oh, now he's chasing his tail in my lap. Okay. This should be fun. I've never filmed a video with him before in the house. Lily hates him, by the way. So first question, how much have you been reading? That's a crazy question. So I don't know how to answer it. So we're just gonna go through some stats. So I've been using the call pile spreadsheet this year that was created by G at Book Roast. I will link the video down below where she talks about and introduces the 2023 version of the spreadsheet, but it's a super intense, nerdy stats spreadsheet that is designed to keep track of who you're reading, how much, page counts, formats, genres, representation, DNFs, a whole bunch of shit. So according to, and I'll put up appropriate graphs and charts when I get to them if any of them are relevant. As you can see, I have read about 30 books a month. Lowest is 28, highest is 37. And now 28 is June. That number is going to increase because I'm going to read at least 5 more books probably before June is over. So we're averaging about 30 books a month. Total books read so far is 194. That's insane. Now that's including DNFs though. I have been DNFing. I've started DNFing. I don't know, I'm sure you're all very proud of me. But it's really, honestly, like, it's very freeing. So without DNFs, I've read 178. So that's still kind of a crazy number, but less crazy than the other one. I don't know. On average, pages read per month, anywhere from, let's see, 9,800 to highest amount is 13,000. So it looks like May is my biggest in terms of page count, and then April is the biggest in terms of book count. Now that doesn't mean anything because I count, graphic novels as a book. Madeline Miller wrote Galatea, and I'm gonna read that, and it's like 23 pages, but it's bound into a tiny hardcover, so I'm counting it, but that's a book. But I've also read like 800, 900 page books, so it all evens out. See what else is interesting in these stats. Mostly new reads. Only 1.3% of my reading is rereads, which is unusual for me. Usually I'm a comfort rereader, but there's just so many new releases and I've bought so many of them and I want to get to them because they all look really awesome or interesting, or I wouldn't have bought them. But I do love a reread and I haven't been doing it as much, so I think I'm gonna reread a couple of things coming up in July. FYI, coming up also, I'm gonna try and do a reading vlog for July, two-parter, because I'm going to be mood reading for the first time in years. I don't have a set monthly TBR, and I'm just going to read what I feel like reading. I'm still gonna try and color code, but I don't have a set TBR. And by the way, is in my lap biting me. I'm also playing with his paws. They're very soft. Okay, stop biting me, Goblin. I think that's about it for stats, but honestly, it's this is a crazy question. How do you even answer a question like this? Question number 2, what have you been reading? Also another crazy question that I'm not going to answer. I just told you that I've read 198 books. Here's where we get to talking about actual books. Pippin. Is your aunt so cute? Oh yeah, that's cute. Okay. Next question. Best book you've read so far? I can't just narrow it down to one. If I had to, you can probably guess what it's going to be though. And that's Liar, Dreamer, Thief by Maria Dong. This is, if I had to pick, which this is making me pick, this is probably my favorite book of the year so far, just because it really got me in the emotions while it was tickling my brain with fanciful things. And I just loved it so much, and I've made so many people read it, and thank you for everyone who humored me and read it. I just love it so much, and I wish more people were reading it. But I also wanted to pick some other books that I've given 5 stars to that have really stuck with me. I actually just finished rereading this for a book club. I read it back in 2016 when it was published, and I realized I remembered very little of it, and I wanted to be able to talk about it with one of my book clubs, and that is The Library at Mount Char. I originally rated this 4 stars because I wasn't really sure what to make of it back when I first read it, but now I'm just enjoying the weirdness. It's a super weird book. I don't even know how to describe it. If you like weirdness, if you don't mind blood and gore, if you like weird books, give this a shot. The audiobook is great. I read the hard copy from the library the first time I read it, and I just did the audiobook from the library. And then I bought a copy because I realized I needed to own it. This is a great book, and it's super weird, like dark fantasy horror. More like dark fantasy though. I can't even talk about it without making a whole video, so we're gonna stop here. Next up, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. This is the Fairy Loot edition. It's super adorable, and I love it, and the book was lovely. So this is a cozy fantasy with some romantic elements, but it's the main character, Emily Wilde, is a scholar at Cambridge, but this is an alternate world where magic is real and fairies exist right alongside humans, and she's a scholar of fairies, and she is working on the very first encyclopedia of fairy kind, and she takes her work very seriously. She's a huge nerd. She's extremely thorough and competent. I enjoyed her very much. She's socially awkward. And then her counterpart, her academic rival, who thinks he's her best friend, named Wendell Bambleby, follows her to this remote location up in the way north she's trying to find the Hidden Ones, which is this group of fae that no one's really ever interacted with. Not much is known about them. So she's there to get the final entry in her encyclopedia before publication. I think she's been working on it for 8 years. Anyway, it's this lovely mix of she's the grumpy one, he's the sunshine one. The atmosphere of the cold and the winter and the small townness was so wonderful. I loved her take on the fae. It felt very traditional. If you've ever read traditional stories about the fairies, how they're tricksy and you have to leave them presents and don't make deals with them and they'll steal people away into fairy, that kind of thing. Not sexy Sarah J. Maas fae, tricksy traditional folklore fae kind of thing. Pippin! He just bit me. He scratched me. He's like playing with my hand. Stop it! It's because I'm on the floor. You know what? I need to get, he knows. So anyway, it was just so lovely. I just was ensorcelled by it. Like, you know when you open a book and like you forget that you're you? That's how I felt when I was reading this. Book 2 is coming out next year. I will buy it immediately. Okay, next up, this one I really didn't see coming. And that is TJ Power Has Something to Prove. This is just something I picked up on a whim because I had added it to my TBR last year when I heard about it coming out, and then never heard anything from anybody. Like, nobody I knew was reading it. And I saw that the library had a copy of the audiobook, which was great, by the way. And I loved this. So this is about a girl named TJ. She is Punjabi American, and it's about, what's the word I'm looking for? It's about body hair and double standards and sexism. So she is involved in this incident with sort of bullying involving her cousin, who is very hairy and who doesn't remove her body hair for personal reasons. They put her picture next to TJ's picture, and TJ's very well groomed. She's very popular, one of the prettiest girls in her year, and said something mean comparing the two. And this just sets her on fire. Pippin! I just sprayed myself. He just bit my foot. He's a demon. So anyway, this lights a fire under her, and through a series of other personal experiences with like one with the boyfriend, some other stuff, she just gets like half mad, half annoyed. She's very uncertain until the end of why she's even doing this, which I really liked, but she just decides to stop. No more waxing, no more threading, no more plucking, no more shaving. She's just gonna let it grow. So I don't know if you can see this, she's got a mustache and her sideburns are growing in. And it's about what happens next and how people react to her and what she learns about herself and about her community along the way. And the thing I like most about this is it was always smart and subtle about what was going on, not ever obvious and like hammery. And it was so emotionally affecting. I'm not Punjabi and I'm not dark skinned, but I am Mediterranean and I have a lot of body hair. And this is something that I dealt with, especially when I was younger. I have PCOS, which makes hair grow more because hormones are all fucked up. Honestly, like, it was so refreshing. It was so well written. It was just so good. And I'm so glad I read it. I immediately bought a copy as soon as I had finished it. Okay, 2 more in this category. I'm already at 15 minutes. Shit. I told you I wasn't going to blabber, and now I'm blabbering. Pippin, he's circling. The next one is The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi. This is actually my second copy of this book, which I bought 2 because this came in a subscription box. And the other one, I loved the American cover, so I wanted both, and I just like hoped that I loved it, and I did love it. So now I can keep both copies and not feel guilty about it. I mean, just look at this shit. I don't know if you could see. And then, oh God, the inside of it, the map, look at how shiny. Oh God, it's so good. And then the front of the book is all gold foil. Oh God, it's so pretty. Anyway, I love this book. It's a pirate adventure fantasy story about Amina, who is a 40-something, I think she's about 44-year-old pirate who's going on one last adventure. And it was so refreshing. I mean, it was fun. The writing was fun. The characters were great. It was so great, first of all, having a woman pirate captain. Second of all, a middle-aged woman pirate captain. And just, I loved the world that she created. I loved everything about this. Highly recommend this if you're looking to get into fantasy. It's like a straight adventure story, not like super complicated world building. It takes place in the Middle Ages on the Mediterranean Sea. So it takes place in our world, but just fantastical things happen alongside mundane things. So actually I learned a lot about the Middle East and the Mediterranean Sea in this time period, which was fun. And then the last one I did want to mention, which I'm surprised by, I've read 2 books from this author this year, loved both of them, gave this one a lower rating than another one that I read, which this will make sense in a second. But this is the one that stuck with me. Like, I loved that book, but it was just a fun time. This one was a crazy fun, like, impactful time, and I keep thinking about it. And that is The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I think I'm going to have to readjust my rating. I initially gave it 4.5, and I think I'm going to have to bump it up to 5 because it has not left me. Just a really good book that mixes like campy horror with like actual horror and social satire commentary about racism and classism. And I don't even want to, I mean, this is another one that to really break it down, I would have to do like a whole video or a whole segment about it. But it's really stuck with me and I very much recommend it. Next question. Best sequel I've read so far this year. I can really only think of 2. Well, I mean, there's Hellbent, which I didn't pull off the shelves, though it's right in front of me. I could get it. But when I think sequel, I think The Lost Meadow. So this is a sequel series, and it's also a sequel in a sequel in the Mistborn series. This is the second era Mistborn. This is the last book in the second series of Mistborn. So it's not only a sequel, it's a final book within a trilogy. And he just nailed it. I'm not going to try and talk about the world. Maybe I'll do like a Brandon Sanderson fantasy video some other time if that's something you guys are interested in. Different types of fantasy to try. This is like for people who've read Brandon Sanderson before. Like, this isn't something that you should just jump into. So I'm not going to talk about it a lot, but the last book in a series, and he did a great job. The characters had great arcs. Stuff was set up for the future because this is a world that he's evolving from like pre-industrial age through to industrialization. And then the next one I think is going to be set in like a 1980s-ish world with computers. And then the last series in this world is going to be space travel with magic. So he's gradually evolving this fantasy world, and this is the second series in that. And he just did a great job. New releases I haven't read yet but want to. Let me just move this because I've got my computer stacked. I got my computer stacked on the stack. So I just went into my room and I pulled a bunch of stuff off the shelves, and actually all of these, except for maybe one of them, I have in my mood reading, they're top contenders because they're ones I really, really, really want to read right now. First up is The Will of the Many by James Islington. I'm not sure how to say that. Epic fantasy. Apparently it's a magic school story. I'm extremely excited. The reviews for this are so good. If you like epic fantasy, apparently this is like the new thing that's going to be awesome. And I very much believe it. Apparently it's like, you can see the columns. It's a Roman-inspired fantasy, I think, involving magic. I purposefully have not read what it's really about because I don't want to know. But this cover is so cool, and I've rarely seen a debut. Well, it's not a debut. He had another series before this that I haven't read yet, but I own the first book in audio. But I've rarely seen a book get this good of reviews. I mean, leaving aside the whole Fourth Wing debacle, if you're familiar with what's going on with that book right now, which is absolutely insane. For like a well-written book, and for like something that is straight fantasy, not fantasy romance, this is just doing absurdly well right now, and I'm really curious about it. Next up in this stack, they're in no particular order, I just grabbed them. We have Our Share of Night by Mariana Enriquez. This was published in her native country. I cannot remember what country that is. She's South American. Shit, I should have looked this up before. Oh, apparently it was published in Spain, but she's not Spanish. I think she lives in South America somewhere. Oh, where does her biography say? Buenos Aires. Yeah. So she lives in Buenos Aires, but this was originally published in 2019, but it was recently released. I think it was late last year. I'm not sure. It's really chunky. It's horror, and it's also dark fantasy about a dad and his young son, and how they get mixed up with this cult that I think involves vampires. I don't know. There's something about this cover just really calls to me, and people have been reading it and giving it rave reviews, and I'm super curious. This one I'm so pumped for, and that's The Shadow Cabinet by Juno Dawson. I actually have 2 copies coming of this, but I'm going to sell one because I want to keep this cover. The pink edges are pretty, but I have one coming that has like to match my Fairy Loot edition from last year. Like, this is just a plain old book, and the Fairy Loot one has like foiling all around the cover, and it has stenciled edges with words on it. Anyway, this is the second book in Juno Dawson's fantasy trilogy set in contemporary Britain about witches, and it's a not so stealthy plea for intersectional feminism and civil rights for people of all sexualities and genders. It's kind of like a big middle finger to J.K. Rowling is what this series is. But it's also really good. I read the first book last year. I expected to like it because I like Juno Dawson. I haven't read any of her like fiction before this because she wrote edgy adult stuff, and that just doesn't appeal to me. But when she said she was writing adult fantasy, and it's about witches and a coven and sisterhood and found family and social clashes, yeah, I'm all in for that shit. And it was really good. I got so sucked into it. I'm so excited to see where the story goes. This one looks like it's bigger than the last one, which makes me happy. The only thing I'm upset about is the Waterstones edition comes with this sticker. And Miriam, I tried your trick with the hairdryer and it failed me. It failed me the first time. Not only did this not come off, like it was not even moved. I don't know if you can see this. It started melting the cover. So I had to stop. So I guess this sticker is staying, which makes me angry. Why does Waterstones do this? Like, put a sticker on it. Either make the sticker pretty. That's not pretty at all. It's boring as shit. Or make it easy to come off. But anyway, so pumped for this. Okay, next up is Ascension by Nicholas Binge. I got this in my Aardvark box last month or the month before. I can't remember. It's a science fiction thriller, which I'm super in the mood for that. I think the last one I read was Upgraded. Is that what it was called? By Blake Crouch. And before that, it was Project Hail Mary. I don't know. I'm super in the mood for it. So the premise of this one is a mountain, a giant ass mountain, appears out of nowhere, like practically overnight in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So they get a bunch of explorers, scientists, people together to go on an expedition to this mountain to see what the fuck is up. That's literally all I know. I hope it's great. 3 more in this category. I really kind of went overboard. The next one up is To Shape a Dragon's Breath by Monoquill Blackgoose. This is a indigenous fantasy young adult. And so there's this, like, if you're not familiar with fantasy, there is a very strong tradition of dragon rider fantasy. Fourth Wing is one of those, by the way. Like, I swear I'm going to read Fourth Wing. I'm too curious for my own good. I'm going to read it. So maybe I'll do a video about it. I don't know. If you're interested, let me know if you want me to, like, see what all the fuss is about and if I like it. Who knows? Maybe I'll love it. Maybe I'll hate it. Maybe I will be... Pippin! Yeah, you're in trouble. He's left me alone and now he's dive bombing the blinds. Anyway, this is a Native American author's take on dragon riding magic school, which sounds awesome. And I immediately pre-ordered it and it arrived in April and I just haven't had a chance to read it. May? April? One of those. And it's going to happen very soon. This next one up is Clytemnestra by Costanza. Oh, they put it right over her name. Costanza Casati. This is also a Waterstones edition. I mean, I couldn't not. This is ridiculous. So pretty. The gold on this cover is like, ugh. But again, this is bullshit. Although I don't think this cover would melt, so I think I am going to use the trick on this with the hairdryer. Anyway, this is a Greek mythology retelling about Clytemnestra, who murdered her husband. Was he Agamemnon? Yeah, Agamemnon, not Menelaus, Agamemnon. I don't actually know much about her other than what I read in Ithaca at the beginning of the year by Claire North, and that's fallen out of my head, so I'm going to have to do a refresher before I dip into this, but I actually haven't heard many people talking about it yet, which is weird, so I'm hopeful it's going to be great. Okay, last one in this category is Witch King by Martha Wells. I'm actually not reading this one until September. I've got it on my official TBR, but I wanted to talk about it because I'm hearing such good things and I'm so excited to read it. This is Martha Wells going back into fantasy after her 8-9 book stint in Murderbot, which is continuing, by the way. Like, there's a new book coming out in the fall. But she used to write fantasy before she wrote science fiction, and this is her going back into that. Don't actually know too much about it other than that the main character's name is Kai, and he's a demon. I think he's the titular Witch King, I'm not sure. And that he was murdered, and we get the story in 2 parts, back from when he was murdered, before he was murdered, leading up to it, and then afterwards when he wakes up imprisoned, I think inside of a sea creature. I don't know. That's all I know, which is a lot more than I thought I knew, actually. But I trust Martha Wells implicitly. She's got this intense brain where she's so creative and she can be really funny. And I've heard there's really good found found family vibes in this. So I'm very much looking forward to it. Okay, next question. Pippin is on my foot. This is dangerous. He's gotten me before there. You guys should see my right leg, by the way. People in real life, you know, you've seen it, but it's all scratched to hell because he likes to climb me. And also when I'm sitting, he'll like jump. And instead of just letting himself fall, he'll hold on to me, but he'll fall anyway. And then, I don't know if you can see this. He was doing that to my arm. Next question, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. Let's go through these real quick. Looking Glass Sound by Katrina Ward. There's a question later about your new favorite author. I can't count Katrina Ward, first of all, because I read the only other book I've read from her last year, because I've decided that you can't be a favorite author unless I've read 2 or more of your books. So I've only read the 1, but it's soon to be 2 in August, which is when Looking Glass Sound comes out, and I am making book club read this, which I'm excited but also nervous about, because if I end up loving it and they don't love it, I will be very sad. And if I end up not liking it, I will be very sad also and embarrassed. What's next? Oh, Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. I don't actually remember what this is about. I think it's a gothic-y horror fantasy tale about a house. Maybe it's haunted. Can't remember. Saw Alex E. Harrow. Immediately pre-ordered. Loved the vibes. Look at that cover. That's all I got. And then I mentioned this earlier, but the next Murderbot book is coming up, System Collapse. This is a full novel. It's shorter than the last full novel, but it's not one of the tiny novellas like most of the books. So it is the second novel in the series, and it's in chronological order this time. The last Murderbot book we got, she went back in the timeline. This one is going forward. Look at him. He's not even sorry. He has no regrets. Stop chewing on my fingers. I can't even be mad at him though, because sometimes he'll come up to me and he'll just groom my hand. And it's extremely cute. But most of the time it's biting. Okay, we're stopping. If anyone has any tricks to teach very incorrigible kittens not to bite as playing, please let me know. And then the last one in this category, the new release that I'm most excited. I mean, there's a lot of new releases I'm excited for. These are the top ones. Is A Power Unbound by Freya Marsky. This comes out in November. It's the last in her trilogy of romances that have an overarching fantasy plot. And the first 2 books were great. And I have no doubt the third will also be great. I've seen some really good early reviews coming out for it. Book that's out of your comfort zone. Pippin, you're just going to stay with me right now. I had a hard time with this one because this year I really have not been reading outside of my comfort zone. And the only times that I really have are because of Read Harder. And that's the case with this book as well. And that's The Bluest Eye. And this is a literary fiction novel about really tough shit. And it was super short, but even though it was short, I had a really hard time getting through it because there was no magic in it. There was no mystery. There was no murder. Well, murder. There's no spaceships. And it was very tough. It was a very tough read, but it was ultimately a really good one. And I read it. Read Harder told me to read a book that my local school district or state school district, something in the state, had recently banned, and found this one on the list. So I read it. I hadn't read a Toni Morrison since undergrad, maybe. I don't think I even read anything in grad school. I think it was undergrad. I read Sula before this, and then I read Beloved in high school. I was way too young for that. I did not compute. I've lost my copy, so I need to rebuy it anyway, but I want to buy it in the edition that matches this, and I should really reread it sometime soon. But anyway, this is my answer for that question. A biggest surprise, not going to get it out again, it's Liar Dreamer Reef. I mean, that book just came out of nowhere. I just literally checked it out like on a whim, and I didn't expect to like it even, let alone love it, and I immediately loved it. Still biting. Okay, new favorite author. So this is what I was talking about. I had a hard time with this one because I was like, well, Maria Dong, but she's only written 1 book. So I really, she could be a one-hit wonder. Those happen. It happens, unfortunately, that sometimes an author just has 1 book in them, or they write 1 book that is for you and the rest of them aren't. So we'll see. Jury's out on her. So what I did was I picked up Grady Hendrix. Computer is resting on Southern Vampire's Guide, so I'm not going to pick that up again. This is the book I was talking about that I gave 5 stars, and I'm going to change my rating on Southern Vampire to 5 stars as well. So these 2 I read this year, making it okay for me, I think, to say officially he's one of my favorite authors, because I have an idea of what his stuff is about now and what parts of his writing and imagination I like and what parts I don't. I previously read The Final Girl Support Group. I read this last year and liked it. It wasn't my favorite. Gave it 3.5 stars. So I did the audiobook, which some people really have been hating. And it wasn't my favorite, but I think it really helps to know that the narrator of this audiobook, whose name I have forgotten, was a final girl in an actual horror movie. I think Friday the 13th. I'll put up the info there so you can see it. But it really helped me with context, like why they chose her, Adrian King maybe, as the audiobook narrator. But the story itself was also not as tight and not as satisfying as Haunted House or Southern Vampire. But I thought it was still good. I don't think it's the trash that some people think it is. I think he was working with some really good ideas here. It just didn't completely come together. This for me worked like gangbusters, and the other one is just on a whole other level. So with that said, I've got 4 more books up for him, and I have 2 of them already on my TBR. I'm reading Paperbacks from Hell I own this on audio in spooky season in October. And then I've got We Sold Our Souls. I have it, I own it, but I don't have it on my TBR yet. I have the audio. And then I own paper copies of Horror Store, which was his first novel, which is so weird. It's in this like coffee table style square format, but it's a horror set inside of like an IKEA-ish store. So it's like the book is formatted like a catalog, but it's about people stuck in a store overnight. We'll see. And then this one I'm really pumped for is My Best Friend's Exorcism. So we'll see how I like those. I don't know how his earlier stuff compares to his later stuff, which I have liked a lot. Okay, next question. I have 2 questions left. We're at 37 minutes. Underrated gems that you've read recently. I'm going to talk about it again because it is underrated. Liar, Dreamer, Thief. I will put up the stats right here. The last time I looked at it was like 2 weeks ago, but I can guarantee you it's not high enough for my liking. So I'm just going to put it right here and be sad about it. Tell people to read this book, you guys. And then I forgot to get the other book. Hold on. Okay, so I actually hauled this book for you guys last summer when I went to Barnes & Noble and bought a bunch of books for $88. But that is A Declaration of the Rights of Magicians by H.J. Perry. So I read this in April, and this was kind of a surprise. Like, it's an alternate history. I didn't really tell you guys what it was about because I didn't really know what it was about when I bought it, which is good, but I also wish I would have known because then I would have been more excited for it. So it's an alternate history where pretty much everything is the same people throughout history, same events, except there's magic. And the magic in here is very class related and race related because social issues and class issues are at the heart of this book because it's about a revolution, the French Revolution. The main characters are Robespierre, who's the architect of the French Revolution and who ultimately was hoisted by his own petard, is that how we say it? When he was beheaded by the guillotine at the end of the Terror. So he's a character. He's secretly a magician. And then we've got William Pitt and William Wilberforce, the prime minister, although he's not prime minister yet at the beginning of the book, but he is by the end. And then a member of parliament who's most famous for getting the UK, which I don't think they were the UK yet, to ban the slave trade and make slavery illegal. And then we've got a character in Haiti. It's not yet Haiti, it's got in Saint Domingue, right on the eve of the Haitian Revolution. So we've got the French Revolution and the Haitian Revolution. And only nobles are allowed to practice magic. And every other person is, if they're detected as having magic, they are braceleted and registered. So they cannot, like it physically hurts them to practice it. And if they're caught using magic without a bracelet and being unregistered, then they can go to jail or pay fines. And it's really unfair and shitty. So anyway, so we get basically the beginnings of the French Revolution and England's reaction to that and Haiti's reaction to that all throughout these 4 characters with magic added, and there's like a shadowy, shady presence behind the scenes who's manipulating all of these people and these situations for his own gain. So anyway, this was a really good book, and what I liked most about it actually was the history. And weirdly enough, like, I bet in the next book things will take a turn and be different from how they turned out in history. But as for this book, which pretty much ends with the end of the Reign of Terror in France in 1794, July, I think, it's pretty much history, just with magic. And I learned so much about the French Revolution. It really stuck in my brain this time. And I really got to know these people, these figures of history, as people. I mean, obviously they're H.G. Perry's versions of these people, but it was just so satisfying, and I was very surprised by it. And I don't think a lot of people have read this that would like it, because maybe they just don't know how awesome it is, or if you've read it and you're just not the right person, because you do have to like history, and you do have to like the idea of playing with history in like a nerdy way. And it's not like big battles, giant quests. There's no romance in here, nothing like that. It's kind of a, I don't want to say academic fantasy, because it's not about academia at all. Scholarly, maybe? I don't know. A fucking nerd wrote this. Last question. Books to read by the end of the year. Another impossible question. So I will now show you my TBR shelf, and then you can just see how impossible this question is. And I'm going to end the video after I show you, so farewell. Please excuse this situation. Oh, there's Lily. Okay, so oops, until I went and pilfered this for the books that I wanted to show you. But these are all books that I hope to get to when I am mood reading in July. So I've got all those, plus the ones I showed you earlier. And then over here, I just bought these, but I don't really want to get to any of those except for this one, Curse of Saints. So then I've got all these. Where's Pippin? Got those. My new TBR shelves. Got those. Oh, there's more down there. Oh, and then there's more down here. Please excuse the litter box that's out there. There's a kitten in here. And yeah, that's my problem, huh? So it's an impossible question. Farewell, and hope you have a lovely weekend.